Hello and welcome to Rob's next video for Flipped Learning. This one is going to be on budgets and mainly variance analysis. So I'm just going to go through a little bit on what budgets and variance analysis is, and then I'm going to conclude with an exam question and show you how you go about answering it. Okay, so first of all, what's a budget? Well, all a budget is it's a financial plan or a forecast. So it's like a prediction. And in the prediction, in the financial plan, we can forecast revenue and expenditure. Expenditure meaning just costs, what we intend on spending. When we combine these two together, because we know that total revenue minus total costs gives us profit, we can also create a budget for what we think our profit might be for any given time period. And that's basically what a budget is. So if you needed to give a definition in an exam, you could just tell the examiner that a budget is a financial plan or forecast. So we can produce three types of budgets. We can produce an income budget, which shows us what we expect revenue to be. Revenue obviously comes from sales and any other source of income. What we think our expenditure budget might be. So this is basically what we're going to spend. And then when we combine these and we do revenue minus costs, we can then predict what we think our profit will be, because it's just total revenue minus total cost. Of the two budgets, income and expenditure, income is the most difficult to predict, as we are trying to predict sales forecasts, what our level of sales might be. As expenditure budgets, money going out, can be easier to plan for, as we can have detailed information before, i.e. what the rent might be, what your bills might be, etc. Okay, so we have a budget and we have our budgeted figure. So we have a forecast, how much we think we might spend, what the money coming in might be, and what the profit might be. But we don't just forget about it. We revisit it and we compare to see what our actual figures were like compared to the budgeted ones. Have we overspent? Have we underspent? Have sales been a lot less than we predicted? And then we can look to see why this might have been the case and what we can do to improve further in the future. So, when we revisit these figures, the difference between what the budgeted figure was and what the actual figure was is known as the variance. So it's the difference between the two figures. So our answer when working out variance is always the amount, so usually in pounds or pence, but then we must not just state what the difference was, but we must say whether it was adverse or whether it was favourable. So what's favourable? Well, favourable is where the actual figure is better than what we predicted. And usually this means that it has a positive impact on profits. So for example, if sales are higher than we expected, then this is favourable. It's going to have a positive impact. If we don't spend as much as we thought we were, we haven't spent as much, so therefore positive impact on profits. So it's favourable. Right, so what's adverse then? Well, adverse is pretty much the opposite. It's when the actual figure is worse than what we budgeted. So when we say worse, it means that the resulting figure is going to have a negative impact on profit. So that would mean sales not as high, or we have spent more than we actually planned to spend. These would be adverse. So here's a summary of favourable and adverse. So examples when a variance might be favourable. Sales revenue higher than we budgeted, so more money has come in. Expenditure is actually lower than we budgeted, so not as much money flowing out of the business as we expected, so costs are lower. So it's going to have a positive impact on profits. And obviously, when the profit is higher than you budgeted for, then this is favourable. Adverse, on the other hand, would be if the money that comes in, the sales revenue, is less than what we budgeted for. So obviously we haven't sold as much, so that's adverse. Expenditure levels were higher than budgeted, so we end up spending more. So if we spend more, it has a negative impact on profit, so it's adverse. And finally, when profit is less than we budgeted for, this would also be adverse. So therefore, you could face a question from the examiner to calculate the revenue variance, the expenditure variance, but usually you're working out the profit variance. So was profit higher or lower than expected, and therefore is it adverse or is it favourable? Right, now I'm going to show you a typical exam question and talk you through the steps for working out the answer. Okay, I'm now going to go through an exam style question with you on profit variance. As you can see, the following question is from the January 2012 old Buzz 2 paper. Okay, let's take a look at the question first. So it's asking us to calculate the profit variance for the Lincoln branch for December only. So, profit variance. So the first thing that we need to understand is that variance is obviously asking us to work out the difference between the budgeted and the actual. So, as the question is asking for the variance, our answer should state whether this is adverse or whether it's favourable. So if you remember from the previous slides, you should know that adverse would mean anything that has a negative impact on profits, as favourable would be anything that has a positive impact on profits. Okay, so let's have a look at the case study and the data given to you so we can calculate the variance for December. Okay, so the question has asked you to calculate the profit variance for December only. Alright, so it's for December, so we're looking and focusing on this column here. Okay, right, so as we can see, the total costs and the profit or loss is blank on here. So the first thing that we need to do is just to complete this column here. Okay, so the total costs column. All we have to do to complete this is just to add up the total costs for the month. So it's just these 5 figures here added together. So the answer, when we add those 5 up, comes to 138.65. So now we have to do the same for the actual costs. So these are the ones that we predicted, we forecast, but then we look at the actual to see what they actually were. So when we add these 5 figures up, we'll get the actual costs. The actual cost figure came to 113.95. So as we can see, we didn't end up spending as much as we predicted, because we forecasted to spend 138.65 and we only spent 113.95, which is obviously going to have a positive impact on profits, so therefore straight away we can see that this is going to be favourable. However, we're going to calculate what the variance is, so it's the difference between the budgeted and the actual. So to figure it out, all you have to do is subtract one from the other. So 138.65 minus 113.95 gives us a variance of 24.7, and because we haven't spent as much as we predicted, then this therefore is favourable. So now that we've got the total cost figures, and we've got the revenue figures, we can work out the profit, because we know that the formula for profit is total revenue minus total costs. So all we have to do to get the profit is revenue minus total costs, and we're going to do that for the budgeted to see what we budgeted the profit to be, and then we're going to work out what the actual profit was by doing the same sum of revenue minus total costs, which will give us our actual profit, and then that will give us the opportunity to work out the variance, which is what the exam question is asking us. So after doing the sum, budgeted minus the actual, for both of these, the profit figures that we should get are 20.57. So 20.57 for the budgeted, and then the actual, when we do 140.85 minus 113.95, gives us 26.9. Okay, let's come back to the question and try put that together slightly more neatly. Right, so from the previous slide and looking at the data, we've worked out the two profit figures. So we've worked out the budgeted, okay, which we've said the budgeted profit was 20.57, and we've worked out the actual, which we've got as 26.9. So those were the figures from the calculations on the previous slide. Okay, so now all we have to do to finish the exam question is to work out the variance, and all that means is what is the difference between the budgeted and the actual, and is it adverse or favourable. So if we do this sum, the difference between the two, so all we have to do is 26.9 minus 20.57, we get an answer of 6.33. Okay, so is it adverse or is it favourable? Well, the actual profit is higher than the budgeted, so it's had a positive impact on profit. So profit is higher than we thought. So therefore, the answer is going to be favourable. The last thing that we need to do is just that all the figures given to us are in thousands, so we just need to put our final answer in thousands. So therefore, the profit variance for the Lincoln branch for December comes to £6,330 favourable. And that answer there gets you full marks from the examiner. I hope you found the following presentation useful. Remember, profit variance will be on your assessment this month, so you need to go over it, watch the video. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me on my college email, which is on screen, or come and find me during any lunchtime before your assessment. Good luck.